Hey there, this is Scott, and welcome to the Mind Switch podcast. It is Friday the 13th as we record this. I don't know about you, but I think we've got enough unusual things going on right now that we don't need Friday the 13th to toss us anything else. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about, I don't know about you, I'm in British Columbia, Canada. I'm going into week number 2 of an enforced lockdown here because of the pandemic. I know that is the case for many places across Canada. And I'm looking forward to another week of reduced social interaction. My volleyball's been canceled. The gym's been sort of rerouted. So I've got to reinvent myself for the next week anyway going on. And hopefully after that, everybody is safe. But it got me to thinking that this is really a gift. This pandemic, with all the havoc that it's wreaked, does have some subtle silver linings that are incredibly valuable if you stop to think about it. And I'm thinking about in this regard, before the pandemic, when I had people that I know that they retire and they've got no plan, and that's what Mind Switch is about, is helping you, really redefine your retirement. You want to, rest, rewire, and then refire. And when they go back after they've retired, it's usually back to the same job. They go back on a full-time basis or a part-time basis, but there's a real caution about reinventing themselves. They're not ready to lean into that. There's a sense of courage that's sort of missing. There's a sense of going back to same because that's all they've done. And I just really think that what we're in now, whether you're going to retire soon or not. So this doesn't apply just because you're about to retire. This applies to any stage. But what has happened because of the pandemic, one of the silver linings, is what I like to call the pandemic break effect. What does that mean? Well, it means we've simply slowed down. We can't travel like we normally would. We can't socialize like we normally would. Most of us have been in our homes more hours in the past few months than we're offering in a whole year. Life has just slowed down. And when you slow things down, you get to notice things that perhaps you don't see at full speed. Prior to pandemic, what was the American Marketing Association saying? That the average person gets exposed to over 10,000 marketing messages a day. From the digital heroin we call our phones to anywhere your eyes go outside, there's always advertisements. And what happens in 2020 life is that you're busy batting away all these things that are competing for your attention. And in that war, and it is a war, and in that war, we can often lose the ability to get in touch with what is truly our journey and what we want it to be. So I take a look at the pandemic breaking effect as a gift of a reduction in velocity of life, that you have a chance to go, here's where I am. I've got some great things going on, and I've got some things that I'd like to improve upon. And the areas we're talking about could be anywhere from your career, to your health, to your legacy, to your finances, to your relationships. It can be in any of those areas, but this whole slowing down period of time gives you a chance to take a pause and take a deeper look at that. And so when I mention this to people, they go, well, that sounds, interesting, Scott, but I don't know where to start. I've been busy for so long that often when we take away the external stimulus of the world, our mind's buzzing, going, okay, what am I going to focus on next? What can feed my attention span next? And it takes a while for that mind muscle to actually relax enough to actually hear itself. For years, we have been living the life that society says we should, the values that all the external stimulus say we have, and often we lose our own voice. So this is a time to regain that voice. So here's what I'm proposing for you to try to do as an experiment, and I'd love to hear how it goes for you. In your calendar, this weekend, next week, find a day where you really just unplug. You've got no computers, no cell phone. For me, what I do, I drive a 2006 Honda Civic. I hop in that Civic. I take a warm mug of tea because it's kind of cold out here these days. I take a notebook and I go to a water's edge somewhere. And I just sit and think about what I would like my life to look like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ahead of time. And it's not that I haven't already thought about that, because I've been doing this for a very long time. But I go in and I check in to make sure that I'm still on track. If you haven't had the chance to do that for a long period of time, it can be a daunting task, because you can sit there and go, I know as your fingers start to twitch looking for your cell phone or the latest social media feed or something else to come into your brain space to entertain you, because it's a different thing when your brain has to actually generate what you're going to think about. So if you're starting out, here's what I suggest. Have a notebook in there, not a digital document computer or anything like that, and write down what moves you. What actually gets you really excited? What are traits or values of things that you're really drawn to? And this can be, it's an exciting journey. It can be a little discomforting too, because at some point you're beginning to shed things that you thought were your own, but aren't. I went through this exercise most recently about a year ago when I was looking for the values of Mind Switch. And, after some lengthy discussions with a wonderful lady, Azadeh, who coached me through this, I came up with 6 values that I actually use as a filter to how to live my life. And those for me, just to give you a sense of where we're at here and for ways that you can start. You find your own words for sure. But mine were things like, courage, self-reflection, authenticity, growth, fun, and positivity. I put those 6 words together, and when I think about engaging with a new work client or a new activity, those are the values with which I guide my life. And it's really interesting that once you get comfortable with those words, then all of a sudden, some activities that you normally accept into your life, you go, I'm doing that more out of habit, or I'm doing that because somebody else wants me to. And I get that sometimes you got to do some things that other people want you to do. I get that. What I've really tried to do as I get into, I'm in my 5th decade of life, if not the 6th decade, going in the 7th decade, is I want to choose the activities I get involved with. And that's what I want for you too. So if you're starting out, that paper, that pen, to write down those words, and you might get a list of 10, 15, 20 words that are values. That's a pretty comprehensive filter. My advice is you shave it down. Give yourself 4, 5, or 6 words that you can actually draw reference to when you're thinking about, I'm going to go back and be like I have been for the last 2 decades. Do those values fit with that kind of lifestyle? And if they don't, hey, guess what you're doing in your second meeting when you hop in your vehicle and go to the water's edge or the forest edge or wherever you feel most comfortable? The really important thing is to have in your windshield going forward in life, your windscreen looking forward, are those values that actually filter out things that really don't belong in your life. And it's incredibly relieving when you go, wow, I can let that go. And all of a sudden there's room for something else to come in. It's hard for me to believe, but it's just over 30 years ago that I first practiced this technique, where I sat down and thought about what was truly important to me. And it was at the top of Diamond Head Mountain on Waikiki in Hawaii, where I had really, I just left a great corporate job with all the financial perks, prestige that my university training said I should have. It just wasn't for me. And that point of reflection took me to that place where I was able to create Canada's largest endangered animal sanctuary and education center. A period of years that provide me fulfillment beyond my wildest imaginations. That's the power of this technique, and it can be applied to any point in your life. Just earlier this year, I had several clients who, when they were suffering, I won't say clients, want to be clients, who were suffering effects from the pandemic and wanted me to work with them. And I took a look at those values that I had reinforced, the previous year, and it just wasn't going to be fun. It was going to be no growth for me. It was just going to be same, and it was basically a money grab for them, which, hey, you know what? I get in business. Sometimes that's what people need to do. But it just wasn't for me, and it allowed me to say no, which in turn allowed me to get involved with teaching at a local university, helping micro food operators grow their businesses in pandemic times. Something that was much more enjoyable for me, certainly provided a larger sense of growth. Yes, I tossed off some financial rewards for that. But at this point, that is not what I held dearest to my heart. And that's what I really wish for you, is that during this pandemic breaking effect, you actually take advantage of this gift. This gift in time to deeply reflect upon where your life has been going the last 5, 10, 20 years. And if you continue the trajectory forward, are you absolutely delighted with where it's going? And if you are, rock on. That is absolutely so fantastic. But if it's not quite where you want to be, then there's probably some value in you actually taking that time and unplugging, forget the Netflix for a little while, and give yourself a really sort of deep look inside what it is you would like. Remember how fast the years have gone by to get you where you are? Just imagine how fast the next ones are going to go. Now, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where you have to take that action step. And, 95% of the time, people intellectually, they think this is a good idea. But execution has never been most individuals' strong suit to get things done that really matter. Otherwise, we'd all be perfectly happy and fulfilled in our lives. So here's what I'm asking from you. Yes, this is me asking this of you. Somewhere over the next 2 or 3 days, take an hour, unplug, and take that piece of paper and just write down the values that you want to live your life by. And if that's all you do, great. But what that starting step often does is gives you a sense of those words just pinging around in your head, and they're bouncing off your career, your relationships, your health, your finances, your legacy, and you're going, some of these things really work out well for me. Others maybe not. And then all of a sudden there's a germination of a sense of momentum inside that, well, maybe, if it was for health perspective, I do go for walks, but it's been a while since I've really had good cardio. Okay, or maybe it's about sleep and you're going to take regular sleep. Whatever a micro step it is for you, it starts that momentum. We don't want to necessarily do it all at once. We can't. So taking those 1 or 2 micro steps at a time, and the first one being just writing down those values, can be a hugely powerful source of fuel for you to move forward in your mind switch. Hey guys, have yourself a great week. We'll talk with you again soon. Cheers.